Tariq lived with his wife Sara in an old countryside house. Their life was simple. Every morning, he went to work in the fields and came back exhausted in the evening. For the first 5 years of their marriage, they had no children. This void filled both their hearts with sorrow. They often wondered how this journey of life would continue. But in front of Allah's will, man has no control. They remained patient. Because of not having children, Tariq's behavior began to change. He started ignoring his wife and sometimes even looked down upon her. But Sara did not give up. She silently endured everything and day and night prayed to Allah to bless them with a child. Years passed. After 7 years, Allah blessed them with a daughter. Sara was overjoyed. Her prayers were answered. Tariq also showed happiness outwardly, but deep inside, he considered the daughter a burden. Sara explained to him that since Allah had given them a daughter, they should be grateful. But his heart remained filled with ingratitude and dislike. Time passed, and the next year, another daughter was born. Some years later, a third one. Sara accepted Allah's decree with contentment, but Tariq's attitude became harsher. He distanced himself from his wife and often insulted her. Sara kept reminding him that this was Allah's decision and there was goodness in it for them. But Tariq dismissed her words. Finally, his cruelty and ignorance reached the point where he divorced Sara. Sara was devastated. After the divorce, she had no support left. She cried, but there was no one to listen. Her only solace was in turning to Allah. Tariq not only divorced her but also drove her out of the house. He built a small mud hut at the corner of the field and left her there with the daughters. Soon after, news spread that Tariq had married another woman in the neighborhood with great celebration. The wedding procession took place, the feast was held, and he indulged in his new life. Tariq abandoned the blessing Allah had given him and tried to create his own happiness. But he didn't realize that destiny is always decided by Allah. When a man commits injustice, the outcome is always painful, though some forget this and think they can succeed by building a life on oppression. Sara's daughters were still very young, 3 or 4 years old, and had to endure hardships with their mother. Sara survived on charity and donations. Despite poverty, humiliation, and loneliness, she never lost hope in Allah. She firmly believed that Allah would eventually show them a way. Meanwhile, Tariq's new life went on. After some time, Allah blessed him with a son, just what he had always wanted. People in the neighborhood began talking. Some said Tariq's first wife must have been the problem, which is why he didn't have a son with her. Others mocked Sara's miserable life, saying that if she was truly pious, she wouldn't be living in such humiliation.
Tariq celebrated the birth of his son with a great feast, inviting the entire neighborhood. For him, this was the greatest success of his life. But man does not know where true goodness lies. Only Allah knows the reality of the outcome. Time moved on. 3 years later, Tariq had a second son, and some years later, a third. Now his heart was at peace. He began to justify his past oppression, thinking he had been right all along. Satan convinced him that everything he was doing was correct. He thought, if Allah gave me 3 sons, that means I am on the right path. But in reality, the fault was entirely his. Tariq continued working in the fields and running his household. Meanwhile, Sara struggled to raise her 3 daughters, surviving only on charity. On one side, the oppressor enjoyed a life full of happiness, while on the other side, a helpless woman endured trial after trial in poverty. But remember, Allah's decisions are always firm. They may appear delayed, but they are certain. Years rolled by and Tariq's sons grew up, while he himself reached the doorstep of old age. Eventually, he asked his wife to find a wealthy and beautiful girl for their eldest son's marriage, saying at least one responsibility could be fulfilled. Meanwhile, Sara's daughters also reached adulthood. Poverty deprived them of life's pleasures. They had no fine clothes, no jewelry, no hope of marriage. Everything seemed like a dream to them. Soon Tariq arranged his eldest son's marriage in the city. The household was filled with joy. During the preparations, one of his sons suggested inviting Sara as well, since she was still their relative. Tariq arrogantly replied, "What's the point of inviting those fools? But fine, let's call them so they can realize their mistake." Sara happily accepted the invitation from the depths of her heart. On the wedding day, she attended with her daughters, not only participating but also serving wholeheartedly. She even instructed her daughters to serve diligently. The marriage was completed. Later, Tariq's second and third sons also got married, and his house was filled with joy and laughter. He felt content, believing he was the most successful man alive. But Sara still lived in her hut with her daughters. Their condition was so dire that if they managed to eat in the morning, they would go hungry at night, and if they had food at night, they would have nothing in the morning. Despite such hardships, people's taunts never stopped. Some said, "Learn something from your ex-husband and his wife. If he wasn't a good man, he wouldn't be so prosperous today." These words pierced Sara's heart like arrows, but she remained silent, bowing her head in prayer and tears before Allah. Now, as old age weakened her, she still carried the heavy responsibility of her daughters. But she never lost her patience. She knew Allah never leaves his servants empty-handed. He gives from where one cannot imagine if only one remains patient.
Not long after, a respectable family from the city came seeking a bride. They saw Sara's second daughter, who was beautiful and well-mannered, and asked for her hand in marriage. For Sara, this was a moment of joy. Without a male guardian, she herself investigated as much as possible and finally agreed. Soon, her second daughter was married with great celebration. The neighbors were astonished that such a respectable family sought marriage in a poor household. But Allah had written it so. Similarly, time passed. Sara's eldest daughter, though battered by poverty, had become soft-hearted and kind. Her good character won everyone's heart. Seeing her qualities, another respected family from the city chose her as a bride for their son. She too was married. Then came Allah's final judgment to punish the oppressor and honor the oppressed. Sometime later, Sara's youngest daughter was also married. After that, Sara was left alone. But Allah did not abandon her. One of her sons-in-law, a wealthy trader, gave Sara a beautiful house in the city so she could live with respect. At first, Sara refused, saying she did not want to burden her daughters. But upon their insistence, she moved to the city. Later, her youngest daughter's husband also joined them. Thus, Allah blessed Sara with dignity, peace, and security. Now Sara was a respected and prosperous woman in the city. She had her own home, some business managed by her son-in-law, and livestock as well. All this was Allah's gift, the reward of her patience and sincerity. Meanwhile, Tariq still lived in the village with his sons. But time turned against him. Two of his sons refused to continue farming and moved to the city for business. Tariq opposed them harshly, but disagreements grew, and finally they left. He was left with only his wife and one son. Sometime later, this son drowned in an accident and died. The shock was unbearable for Tariq. His once joyful home shattered within a few years. The widow of his deceased son also returned to her parents' home. Now only Tariq and his wife were left. The man who once boasted of his happiness was drowning in loneliness and grief. Later, Tariq even divorced his second wife after a quarrel. The poor woman's world collapsed. Only then did she realize that Sara had been innocent and Tariq was at fault. The grief of losing her son and the pain of divorce made her ill. Soon after, her sons took her to the city. Now Tariq was utterly alone. Though he owned vast land and grand houses, he had no strength to even buy himself food. The weight of grief, separation, and old age destroyed him. One day, Sara's eldest daughter came to the village to visit relatives. On her way, she saw an old man, frail, filthy clothes, disheveled hair, a face full of sorrow, and eyes lifeless. He looked insane. She asked her husband, "Let's ask someone where Tariq the landlord's house is. I want to see him. He wronged us, but he is my father, my blood. How can I just walk away?"
Her husband approached the old man and asked, "Uncle, can you tell us where Tariq the landlord lives?" With tearful eyes and a trembling voice, the old man said, "Son, I am that unfortunate Tariq. Tell me, what do you want?" Seeing her father's condition, the daughter screamed and wept. She immediately took him to the city, arranged treatment, and cared for him. Her husband, a noble man, said, "He is your father. Serving him is your duty." She began to care for him, and soon Tariq regained some strength. One day, Tariq called Sara and his daughters and tearfully apologized. He said, "The greatest injustice I committed was against all of you. The separation from my children and wife has broken me, but I know your suffering cannot be erased with one apology. Allah's justice is mighty. When his punishment comes, no one can escape." Sara was innocent. The fault was mine. She was destined for honor, and she received it. Humiliation was my share. Had it not been for my daughters, I would have perished. My sons abandoned me. If I survived, it was because of the daughters I once considered a burden. Everyone was moved by his helplessness. The daughters wept and served him with love. Sarah's eyes were filled with tears, but she could do nothing except instruct her daughters to continue serving him. Soon, Tariq fell seriously ill with a painful disease. He screamed in agony all night, while the same daughters he once rejected stood by him in service. Lying against the wall, he wept bitterly, saying, "The ones I considered a burden became my support, and the sons I was proud of turned out to be my enemies." Finally, Tariq died. Allah granted Sara, who once had nothing, dignity and honor.